Thanks, everyone. So next we have Marjorie McLagan, who is the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for Oregon State University. Prior to OSU, she worked for 20 years with the U.S. Air Force in IT leadership, operation, and planning. Please welcome Marjorie.
Thank you. I normally don't like being tied to a podium, but I'll do my best to hang about. So what I didn't provide today was an obligatory bio slide, but you did get to hear a little bit about me. So I've been back in the Pacific Northwest for the last 6 years. I came to OSU 6 years ago. I've been in my current role. I just hit 2 years. It's been a ridiculously fast 2 years as the deputy CISO at the school that's just north of here. I'm mindful, thank you. I was like, I'm mindful of where I am. Feel a little bit like behind enemy lines. I say that jokingly because we get along really, really well with the information security officer here and the office here. We try to do a lot of collaborative work. So having said that, today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our zero trust journey. We aren't calling it zero trust, so I'm going to explain that here in a little bit, but it's smart access. A little bit of marketing, just knowing our audience, actually primarily being at a higher institution. So I am gonna dive right in. So I have many versions of this presentation, so I intend to get finished so that there's some time at the end for questions. But I've done everything from like speed dating in 5 minutes to up to an hour on it. So I'm really trying to tailor it, but I do hope to have some time at the end for some questions. So zero trust at OSU. We are calling it smart access. So when we first started doing some information sessions around zero trust with members of our community, they said, "You don't trust us? What do you mean you don't trust us?" We do a lot of things, good for the world, we're seeking knowledge, all the things. So we said, how about we call it smart access? Because we do trust you, but there are a lot of people we don't trust. So we want you to have access to what you need, therefore it's smart access, and only what you need, as opposed to a lot of, other things. So how many here are familiar with CISA? Yes, use CISA stuff. This is good. We have adopted the CISA Zero Trust Maturity Model as an approach for us. So I'm going to spend some time, if you're not familiar with that, that's one of the goals of this, is you will become a little bit more familiar, because that's what we are using as our model to go through this and approach a Zero Trust security architecture. So here's some information from that Zero Trust Maturity Model. Lots of words you can read. The things that you should notice, though, it is not simple. It is very complex. If someone comes to you and tells you they have a single thing that is going to provide you zero trust, that is probably not true. Or it is a very simple and not complete thing that you're looking at implementing. So things that I like to talk about specifically in what CISA talks about here is that very last line. How many times have we put together a solution and the technology that we implemented was easy to implement and we left our users behind? Does that sound familiar? Well, as technologists, we normally don't think about it that way. It worked, right? We got what we wanted. Well, this is fundamentally zero trust, as it says, fundamentally zero trust may require a change in an organization's cybersecurity philosophy and culture. And the big picture, or the big point there is the culture, because it will impact the users. What they are used to doing today will change when we do some of these things. So, pushing forward, here are some basic concepts that are put together in the Zero Trust Maturity Model from CISA. There are 5 pillars. Those are listed: identity, device, network, applications, and data. This is not something that you can do all at once, at least not resourced as we currently are. So in looking at what we were going to do to tackle this, I'm going to focus on those first 2. Actually, identity and device. But this is to give you a sense of what is entirely needed if you're going to look at doing zero trust. Other things you need to consider And these are cross-cutting across all of those pillars. It's visibility and analytics, orchestration and automation, and then governance. And this next slide is one of my favorite slides. This is what it takes to build it. So it kind of goes back to my comment about if someone says that they have a zero trust architecture solution, they're probably not looking at it holistically. And if someone says they can do it all at once, they either have a lot more resources than I have or a lot more money, and probably more than the folks in this room too. So we had an event a little more than 2 years ago. We stayed out of the news. We were very, very lucky. I would even share that my current position is a result of that event because of the adding more resources to the Office of Information Security so that we could get after what we believe to be the priorities to make the biggest difference in protecting our institution and protecting the people in its data. And with that in mind, we focused in on those first two pillars. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about identity because that's where we have put a lot of effort. This is my next favorite slide, also taken straight from the CISA Zero Trust Cyber Maturity Model. The idea here is it's not something that you can go to the top of the mountain with all 5 of those pillars in a really expedited manner unless you have unlimited resources. And the idea here being is that it is definitely a journey. So we've spent 2 years working on identity, and we're not anywhere close to being done, but we're in a better place than where we were. And what's great about this particular picture, and if you look along the side where it has traditional, initial, advanced, optimal. Think traditional is everything done by hand, and think optimal is everything done by machine. So 100% automated. I know in my environment, I don't think there is a single one of these pillars that we will realistically ever go to the top. There will be exceptions. There will be things that are not done in an automated manner, and that's okay. But this gives us a guide for picking where is the right level for our organization, for our cybersecurity needs, for our users' needs. And so, and the great part about this is it's not super simple. You don't just go straight up the mountain. You're gonna take a break at base camp. You're gonna gather some more gear. You're gonna go to your next step. You're gonna evaluate, is this good enough? Is the view great from here, or do I need to keep going? And so we're using this as we assess each of those pillars. I talked about this a little bit, traditional being completely by hand, and then optimal being fully automated. This is really hard to read, but the intent is this is taken directly from that maturity model and gives you real words about how you could implement each of these pillars at each of those steps. I'm going to zoom in on a couple of them, but this is very consumable. So the other piece that I love about this is I can use this as a piece of reference material for the OSU IT community, and they understand it. Like, it gives them something we are going to do. So for example, on the third block up, the advanced level of the identity pillar, that's our goal. And the first thing that's listed in those bullets is phishing-resistant MFA. How many of y'all deal with phishing all the time, every day, 24/7, right? So phishing-resistant MFA is what that is a very clear goal for us, which is also why we picked identity as our target. It was very clear what we wanted to do. Why did we pick identity first? We need to know who. We need to, and at our institution, we didn't really have true identity lifecycle management. We had identity lifecycle management for people's primary account, but that was not all of the accounts. That was not privileged accounts. It was people's primary account at the user level. And so we focused on knowing the who so that we could implement true identity lifecycle management. The other thing, and I'm really just going to touch base on this one quickly. If you have questions about this one, I would love to answer them because it's been a parallel journey for endpoints. It's not going to be where I spend a lot of time today sharing, but we've done a ton of work in the endpoint space as well. In looking at the model, we said we think this is about where we are in terms of where we were starting. And actually right now, today, in the identity space, that's about where we are. Although we're still working on all the accounts, and I'll get to that when I talk about our identity system. This was a guess at where we think we might be going. So I talked about being really clear on the identity pillar and wanting that advanced. We know where we're going there. But these others, not so much. It's not as clear. We know we need to increase our maturity, and we also know there's going to be some places in there where we balance accepted risk versus increasing our maturity. In the devices pillar, I'll say it's become more clear that we expect to be something like initial for all OSU devices, all OSU-owned devices, and then something closer to advanced for certain populations. I'll pick on the controllers unit. So we know that because of GLBA compliance, we're going to have that group of people and their devices probably at a higher tier. I refer to it a bit like an overlay. So they would meet our baseline, whatever that is, in the initial space. And then we have another requirement for that particular population based on their work, based on the data they access, things like that. So we expect that devices will be closer to that. It's not going to be one solution for everybody, but we will be targeting what makes sense for a certain population. So I talked about having one that was a little bit easier to read. Still hard to read, but it's straight out of the maturity model. And the phishing-resistant MFA is actually really easy to sell to both the user community, IT community. I mean, they may not understand it until you explain it a little bit. We got over understanding what MFA was when we implemented MFA. We have Duo at OSU. But people understand phishing a little bit more. And so when you tell them that that's the intent, they can get excited about that. One of the things that we're looking at, in fact, super excited to share, we just went passwordless for our privileged accounts. And so, in fact, we just made that cut over at the end of September. The very aspirational goal, my boss would probably be unhappy that I said aspirational. Our goal for spring is that we will have sections within the OSU user population that are already in passwordless. He would say all passwordless by spring. I also know he's really good at setting anchors and negotiating, and so my negotiation stance is that we get the controller unit passwordless by spring. But it worked very well. Good learning. I wouldn't say it was seamless. There's some bumps in the road there. We're a Microsoft shop, and so we're shifting to Azure SSO with Authenticator for our privileged accounts. And depending on mobile devices, that was not seamless. But great group to be able to be testing so we could have all of this information available when we start to go to user populations. So, smart access at OSU. This is just for context, kind of who we are, where we are, and what kind of volume. So we have, it's actually over 35,000 for fall, 8,700 employees, it's 100,000 accounts, 500,000 identities. It gives you a sense of our scope. Here's an easier to read identity pillar. So that gives you what each of those levels of maturity offer. So you have traditional, initial, advanced, optimal, straight out of the maturity guide. And this, we very clearly fall in initial with where we are right now. Again, easier to read. That's our goal. Very, very easy to sell, in my opinion. I have very few people that disagree with that in terms of where we need to be going. So what are our goals? The identity pillar goals. So strong authentication, The visibility is huge. I talked about that with regard to we didn't have visibility on all the accounts. That's in progress. I'm going to talk about that solution here in a minute. And then, let's see, looking at time, I do need to speed up. Devices. So how many of you seen this was taken from our endpoint team not that long ago, as far as devices that had been rounded up and we were trying to retire? So we have similar goals in the device pillar. Like I said, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about devices, but I'd be happy to if you had questions about what we're choosing to do there. Other pillars, it's not so clear. So we know that we need to get after it, but we're not really sure. When opportunities come up, we're going to take advantage of those opportunities, but we're working on what makes sense. Actually, I think data is the next pillar we're going to tackle. We're working really close with our data team to be able to make efforts to establish clear goals and outcomes for the data. So I talked about replacing our identity system. We had a 20-year-old homegrown system. It was great for user accounts, like just user accounts, and it was not all accounts. So when we're looking at possible solutions, moving beyond that traditional level, what are the things that we wanted it to include? So we needed a repository, we needed account provisioning, access management, we needed authentication, strong auth, device compliance, we want to be able to look at that. That kind of dabbles in the other pillars, and then whatever our zero trust policy engine is. So at OSU, when we are looking forward, this is what we see today as what we expect for these elements and how they to be filled. I'm going to talk about Savient. Savient is the IGA tool that we selected, which, let's see. Oh, yeah, here we go. Implementation. So we established that we needed to replace our identity. It is actually on our strategic roadmap for the OSU IT plan to include. It's in direct support of a much bigger project that we're working on called the Administration Modernization Program. So there are parts of Banner we're replacing. And so this identity piece was a foundational effort to support AMP, and therefore was prioritized, and we did receive a decent budget to support it. So we did go with an purchasing of a tool, and we did go with purchasing an implementation partner so that we could implement that tool in a much faster manner. So we did the RFP for the tool from January through September of 22. It took about 60, almost 90 days for the actual contract to be put in place, which put us a little bit behind. And then we kicked off a year-long, no, it was a 15-month contract with Savient, which we're in right now. Savient's the tool. We have an implementation partner as well. So we went through Sprint 1. We went live with our new system the end of June of this year. Very exciting. There were a lot of folks that were unhappy with that planning time because that's fiscal year rollover. We had to do some really clear communication saying this only impacts new users. So anybody that is a user already, has an account, it's going to continue to work. This is the creation of new accounts, and that actually is the slowest time in the whole year of when new accounts are being created. And so that was part of why we went with that. It also worked very well with our implementation partner. So we did go live. We're just finishing Sprint 2. You can see some of the things now. So Sprint 1 was about creation of new accounts in the tool. Sprint 2 began pulling in applications, so we knew about all of those other accounts, so we could and begin provisioning access through the tool versus independent with each of those separate applications. Sprint 3 is upon us. We're supposed to have started this week. We're in the middle of Cybersecurity Awareness Month kickoff, so we're kind of doing the launch for Sprint 3. But we are happy so far with what we've been doing. It has its limitations. My argument is most of the tools we looked at did. So it became what was going to be best bang for the buck for us and meet the requirements that we had built into that RFP. So what are we doing next after we deal with identity? So these are the things specifically associated with the identity project. that we are doing next. We're going to continue to integrate apps. Microsoft tells us we have like 1,500 apps in our environment. We have about 150 behind SSO. Those are going to be the ones that we care about first. And then there'll be some determination, are we getting them all? Or are we getting just the ones behind SSO? But that comes to the making decision points in the future. Institutionally defined roles is something, huge project that's underway. How many of you understand the challenge around what is a student? I appreciate that. I can say, as a new person to higher ed, I was like, what? I could write that definition. What's the problem? I'm like, oh, now I understand how complicated it is. And so not only is it complicated just to get even the institution to understand how to define it, how can you take that and then implement it with access to tools? That's a real challenge. So that's a parallel effort that's going on with us right now. I talked about password lists. We're working on that. We have 11 domains. We're working on consolidation of those. That's going to take some time. And then the expanded single identity store. All those things are going into the IGA tool. Couple of things for me to leave you with. I love this picture. It's complicated, but it also becomes very clear how you can get after it, what part you're working on, what part you're not working on. And it's a journey. The idea that you can figure out what's the next step. How can you systematically increase your maturity, sell it to both your IT community, sell it to the users that are going to be impacted so that they can understand the why. And a few things. Oh, I'm going to have lots of time for questions. This is great. So this is a shout out to the team at OSU, the Information Security Office team. The IAM team has been working exceptionally hard with this identity project. It has been a super aggressive timeline. And so it's been fun, but they've been working their tails off. Questions. I left lots of time for questions, which is great. Whoever can get to the microphone, jump, go to the mic. It sounds like it's on. Oh, maybe not.
I was just wondering if you were going to use Duo across the board for your MFA solution, or if you consider doing different solutions based on the risks for the user group.
So one of the other things that's in our strategic plan is to simplify IT. And simplifying IT also means reduction of duplicative services. And so it is on our roadmap to move away from Duo, given that we already are paying for that same ability in the Microsoft space. So that is on the roadmap. I know that there's some legacy auth things that are going to be out there that we're going to have to figure out, but that is the intent. The intent is to actually go away from Duo. Sorry, Duo. It's been great, but now we have two. We're paying for two.
So the CISA standard mentions identity risk assessments. Just curious what your plan was around those.
So we went through an extensive risk assessment following our big event. And so we had a list of to-dos as a result of that. And so when we get through those, we will do another assessment. I think that we'll probably do an internal, even when we get to the point where we're finished with this, with our implementation partner for the solution. Okay, where are we? Document it. No, we had a lovely list of to-dos. It's a nice way to put it. Other questions? Endpoints? Anybody want to hear about endpoints? I could take 5 minutes on that, I suppose. I scratched that because I didn't think I would make time. So for endpoints, we decided that we needed to work on, we have a very highly distributed environment. So I work in the central IT function, University of Information and Technology. That's where the Office of Information Security sits. And we have a lot of things that are centrally managed. We also have a lot of things that are not centrally managed. So the big colleges have an IT department within them. So College of Engineering, College of Forestry, College of Veterinary Medicine. Who am I missing? College of Business and CIAS, Oceanic and Atmospheric Sciences. So they, what we discovered even for our Windows endpoints is that there were 5 versions of SCCM on campus. 5. We wanted to be able to go to Intune. So we started an effort with Microsoft. They have things called fast tracks. I like to call it now the fast stop. Because we got on the call and they went, okay, here's your prereqs. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. And we went, no. And one of those was one version of SCCM to be able to do a migration to Intune. So we gathered all the groups that had it, got them together, and it took us a long time, but it was a very collaborative effort. What we learned is each of those groups were actually taking advantage of different parts of the tool. And I will be the first to admit that Central was not doing the best at using the tool. And so we used that group to both rebuild into a single and to take advantage of what was working for each of the groups. It became an interesting challenge for role-based access controls because the intent was still to allow each of those groups to manage their devices. It was a good challenge. Microsoft was actually a phenomenal partner with us to be able to get that in place. And so we were able to do that. Since then, what have we done? We have pushed all those things to Intune. Intune is not our management source yet, but they are all enrolled in Intune. So we're still using SCCM on-prem for that, for Windows devices. And we're using Jamf for our Macs, and we're still working on Linux. So common tools was the theme to be able to even get to a point where we could start going up the maturity ladder. So if you are interested in swapping stories around any of those challenges, reach out. That's me. I think I've used my time now. Any more questions?